So I've talked a few times about how the campaign system in Mordheim is one of the game's best features. Watching the warband grow from game to game gives a real sense of purpose to the individual battles that you're fighting. You really do see a story begin to form around your warband as members earn new skills and abilities, and as beloved heroes are cut down in their prime. Each scenario offers an opportunity for a new chapter to be written in the chronicle of your adventures in Mordheim. While the scenarios offer some great context to the battles in the forms of goals and objectives, they don't really provide much sense of place or location. The battles are just supposed to be taking place in some anomalous part of the city. This is honestly not too bad, as the battles and warband management offer enough excitement and development opportunities for the storyteller and me, but there is a way to add that missing piece of the puzzle throughout your campaign. The Mordheim Map Campaign is a fan project that was created in late 2020 and originally posted on the Mordheim Facebook group. The idea of having a map-based campaign was something that the designer wanted to include in the original release of Mordheim, but it was unfortunately cut due to time constraints. However, the community that this game has garnered came through once again to demonstrate the sheer creativity of a bunch of dedicated nerds to a game that truly is worthy of their time. The Mordheim Map Campaign involves players fighting battles in specific districts in the city, each which confers a benefit to the player who wins the battle. After each battle, players will complete the post-game sequence just like in a normal campaign, but they'll be able to use certain benefits awarded to them by the districts that they control. These include things like increased income from selling Weirdstone, discounts on certain equipment or hired swords, extra exploration dice, and a ton of other awesome bonuses. These bonuses start to stack up as a warband takes more territory, adding much more context as well as higher stakes to your Mordheim campaign. So for this video, I'd like to talk about how to run a campaign according to the rules included on the map, how I run a campaign to make it run smoothly, and what this campaign adds to the game. Hopefully after all is said and done, you'll have an easier time deciding if a Mordheim map campaign is right for your group. Let's start out by having a look at the Mordheim map. In the center, you have a beautiful illustration of the city. You can see that every district is labeled and has a circle around it, and each one has lines connecting it to its neighboring districts. There are 4 gates around the city: the South Gate, East Gate, River Gate, and the West Gate, as well as some thematic encampments located around the edge of the map. These encampments don't actually count as districts, and you can't fight over them, so they're there just for flavor, I guess. On either side of the map is a complete list of all the districts, as well as the unique benefit that they confer to the person who has a foothold there. We also have some unique symbols next to certain districts, as well as a description of those symbols on the bottom here, which we'll get to a little later. Finally, along the bottom edge of the map, we have the rules for running a map campaign, which I will attempt to explain to you as simply as I can. Also, if you can't tell in the video, I printed my map out at the wrong resolution, so it's a little blurry, but it's not too bad when you are using it in person. So the campaign starts out as normal, with each player building a warband with their 500 gold limit. Players then pick a district that they wish to battle in. New players have to pick one of the 4 gates on the outside of the city for their first battle. Opponents should agree on which district they're fighting over, but you could roll for it if they cannot come to an agreement. So let's say I'm playing a Witch Hunter warband, and you're over here playing Reichlanders. Let's say I want my first battle to be in the East Gate, and you want your battle to be in the South Gate. You and I are allowed to fight over either of those for our first battle. So we could come to an agreement and choose to fight in the East Gate, or maybe we can roll off and the higher player gets to choose where we have our fight. Once players have battled in a district, they count as having explored that district. This is important to note down because players can only pick a district for their next battle if they can reach it via an unbroken route of explored districts. So if the Reichlanders here have explored the East Gate, they can pick the East Gate, Sage's Hall, City Hall, or the Temple of Sigmar for their next battle. In addition, they could also pick any of the other gates if they wanted. It's worth noting that simply picking a district to fight in doesn't mean you've explored it. For example, if I picked the East Gate and for some reason I was chosen to fight at the South Gate, I did not count as exploring the East Gate. Because my battle took place here, I will have counted as exploring the South Gate after this battle. Here's another example. Let's say I explored the East Gate and now I want to fight in the Sage's Hall next round, but my opponent wants to fight in the Middle Bridge. And if we can't come to an agreement, we'll have to roll for it. So let's say we roll and the Reiklander wins here. That means our battle will not be fought here, it'll be fought in the Middle Bridge. So now I will have counted as exploring the East Gate from the first round, and then this next round I will count as exploring the Middle Bridge. This means that for next round, regardless of the outcome of this battle, I can pick to retarget the Sage's Hall if I want, or I can go to Temple of Sigmar, City Hall. But now, since I've explored the Middle Bridge, I can pick any location connected to the Middle Bridge, which opens up my opportunities quite a bit. So after a battle takes place, the winner gains a foothold in the area, which means they have access to the benefit that the district confers. So if I beat the Reiklanders at the Middle Bridge, and I claim a foothold, that means I get 2d6 extra gold crowns if any other warband needs to cross the Middle Bridge to get to their next battle. So this is all going pretty well for me. I won the battle, I got a new perk I can use, and I have more districts available to me. But guess what? That's not all. I mentioned these symbols here earlier. Well, now we can get to those. These symbols represent points of interest that are present in that district. Not every district has a point of interest, and some have multiple. A district with a twin-tailed comet has an abundance of weirdstone. The winner of a battle there gets 1d3 extra weirdstone shards. And that's not just a one-time thing, that's every time there's a battle there. I'll come back to this symbol. But here we have the skull. This marks the gates of Mordheim. If you control a foothold at one of the gates, that means you can freely pass through the gate onwards to another location without paying any kind of fee. But if you must pass through a certain gate that you don't have a foothold in, then you have to pay 5 gold crowns. For example, if I have a foothold in the East Gate, I can go to Sage's Hall without paying any gold next round. But, as you remember, I won a battle at the Middle Bridge, so next round I could potentially go to the Rock to have a battle. Well, that means that for next battle, I would have to enter through the South Gate, and if I don't have a foothold here, that means I have to pay an extra 5 gold crowns to fight at the Rock. Finally, we have this skewered fish symbol. That means that the area is a hard-fought district. This means that the benefit of the district can only be used by a single warband. So if more than one warband has a foothold there, nobody gets to enjoy the benefit. Before we go any further, I'll briefly explain what these gems mean on our map here. We use these gems to mark who has a foothold and who has explored any district. So any district that has a single gem of one color means that that warband has only explored the district. But if they have 2 gems, then that means they've explored it and they have a foothold there. So you can see in the pit here, we have 3 warbands, the yellow, blue, and red, have a foothold, while the purple warband has only explored it. So this brings me to my next point. We talked about hard-fought districts, which only give a benefit if a single warband has a foothold there. But how do you actually remove enemy footholds? So let's say I'm the Witch Hunters again, and I am the blue warband, and these Reiklanders are fittingly the red warband. Let's say they have a foothold in the Rock, and I want to go to the Rock in an effort to try and knock their foothold off of that rock to free up control and to gain my own foothold there. So if you target a district that has an enemy foothold, and you and that enemy have a battle there, then the rules are a little different. Instead of rolling a random scenario, you play the surprise attack scenario from the rulebook, with the player who controls the foothold playing as the defender. If the defender wins, then they get +1 leadership permanently to all future battles in that district. But if the attacker wins, like if the Reiklanders are defeated by my Witch Hunters, then the Reiklanders will lose their foothold in the area, and the Witch Hunters will gain one. I should note that the rules don't actually state to remove the defender's foothold, but I believe that's the implied ruling, which I'll get back to in a second. So what if both combatants have a foothold in the district? Like if my Witch Hunters and the Reiklanders have footholds in the pit. In that case, you play the Defend the Fine scenario, and the winner of that fight gets +1 experience on their leader. It is also implied that the loser must remove their foothold. But again, this is not explicitly stated in the rules. But I believe this is the case, since otherwise hard-fought districts would forever be in limbo if more than one warband had a foothold and you weren't actually able to remove footholds. Play continues like this, with players picking districts, fighting battles, and growing their warband until some predetermined goal is met. You can set the end goal of your campaign to pretty much whatever you'd like. You could do most footholds after X amount of rounds, or most weirdstone collected, or highest warband rating, or whatever you want. The rules are vague on this point, so it's sort of up to you and your group. Overall, I think the map campaign offers a fun bit of context to the battles and gives the city of Mordheim a more lived-in feeling. It's fun to see how your battles will influence the course of the campaign as you push through the city in an effort to reach a district that you'd really like to take advantage of. Now, I'd like to talk a little about my experience with the campaign and what I did to make things run smoothly. The rules printed on the map are a bit vague on how to manage picking districts and picking opponents. For example, it doesn't mention the order in which players are meant to pick their districts. It also doesn't talk at all about how to organize matches or what to do if you have an odd number of players. The scenarios in the main rulebook are not designed for more than 2 players, and the rules make no mention of the Chaos in the Street supplement for multiplayer battles. So I had to do a bit of heavy lifting before our campaign to make the system run smoothly for our group of 6 players. First, I decided that players should pick their districts based on warband rating, in descending order from, highest to lowest. This was intended to represent smaller warbands being more agile and more able to rapidly adapt. If you ran this for yourself, you could do this too, or maybe even have players write down their intended districts and reveal them at the same time. Secondly, we randomly assigned opponents. Because warbands can only choose districts near ones they have already explored, I can see the scenario arising in which 2 players are fighting over and over the same district simply because they're neighbors. Maybe this could work for your campaign, as having 2 bitter rivals fighting over a single district for the whole campaign would be pretty funny and thematic. We wanted to make sure that everyone fought each other at least once, and that matchups weren't being repeated too often. Thirdly, I came up with a system to compensate players for missing out on a round if they couldn't attend. I do this for pretty much every campaign I run. The player who misses a game earns D3 plus 1 Weirdstone shards and D3 plus 4 experience. They're allowed to spread this D3 plus 4 experience among any of their warriors, with no more than 2 being given to one single hero or henchman group. This did a pretty good job of preventing players who had to miss a game from falling too far behind, while also not rewarding them more greatly than the players who could actually attend. Also, a player could scrap their warband at any time and start over at another round. Their new warband would inherit all the same footholds that their old one had. This is mainly a failsafe for players who weren't enjoying the warband they were playing, or if Mordheim was particularly cruel to them, which it definitely can be at times. Finally, let's talk about the odd number issue. Since the rules give no guidance on how to deal with an odd number of players, we just said that there would be 1 multiplayer battle if the situation required. We tried to keep track of who had already fought in a multiplayer battle to try and switch it up and keep things even from round to round. If 1 or more players had a foothold in the district where the multiplayer battle is taking place, you could find a suitable scenario for the occasion in the rules for multiplayer battles in Town Crier number 5. I would also suggest that you give some extra compensation to players who must fight in a multiplayer battle if there are other players who are not fighting in a multiplayer battle. Because in the occasion that there is a multiplayer battle and at least 1 non-multiplayer battle, there's going to be more losers than there are winners. So maybe everybody who plays in a multiplayer battle gets 1 extra Weirdstone for their troubles. Also, I'll quickly mention that we eventually ignored the 5 gold gate toll thing very early on in the campaign. It left too many unanswered questions regarding which gates must be used for which district, and we don't think the 5 crown toll really added any worthwhile nuance to the game. Once players started amassing footholds and perks and extra rules, we were more than happy to remove this little 5 crown toll just for the sake of smoothing out gameplay and just less rules, honestly. So how did our campaign go? Well, to tell you the truth, we never finished our campaign. I set the campaign goal at most footholds after 10 games, and with our 10th game set to be a big free-for-all multiplayer battle to, really send things off with a bang and break any ties between players who, might have had the same number of footholds. However, we stopped after game 9 and never determined an official winner of the campaign. There are 3 factors as to why I think our campaign fell apart, which I'll try to articulate, and I'll try to let you know how things might have personally gone wrong for us, but how they might not go wrong for you. Point number 1, 10 games felt like way too many for us. We played 1 game a week for 9 weeks straight. 9 games with 1 warband is kind of a lot in our group. And I think warband growth tends to plateau around game 6 or 7. So I think players were feeling a bit burnt out by the end. 10 games may work with the right combination of players and attitudes, as I myself have taken warbands in the past to more than 15 games. But your results will definitely vary on the people you're playing with and how much fun you're having with the warband. Point number 2, snowballing. Because of the nature of the campaign, a winning warband can really start to outpace all the other warbands in the campaign. If I'm making more gold every game and paying less for crucial equipment and hired swords, I only stand to win even more games as I collect more footholds. There's really no catch-up mechanic or speed bump to slow down any runaway winners, unless players are all willing to make a concentrated effort to stamp down the top dogs. I think towards the end, some of the players felt like there really was no hope for them to win, and they started losing energy. Point number 3, competition. This last point is probably the most subjective of the 3. Mordheim is simply not the most balanced game. Certain warbands just have a leg up on others. For this reason, our group enjoys very casual games with lots of banter, smack talk, joking around, where the actual gameplay is kind of just a vehicle for hanging out and sharing a laugh. The map campaign really raises the stakes. Every battle is important because if you lose, it means your opponent is only going to grow that much more and you're going to be set back even farther. This made for longer turns, more brain burn, and more disappointment if the dice rolls started going south. This may be unique to our group, but we don't really enjoy kicking each other's sandcastles over. We don't want to make decisions purely to set each other back and get a leg up on one another. But if you're going to win in a map campaign, you have to be okay with attacking your friends and stealing their lunch money. You have to be okay with targeting the highly contested footholds and potentially setting your friends back in their campaign. If you can keep everything lighthearted and keep everything in a spirit of friendly competition, then I think you'll have a better chance at this campaign succeeding for you. Also, one more point is we didn't all play the same scenario each game. We ended up rolling for scenarios, unless of course you were targeting someone in their own foothold. I don't think this had a huge impact on our campaign, but it might make things a bit more balanced if you all fight the same scenario each round. So our campaign fell apart, but I still had a lot of fun despite how it ended. And I think this campaign can work for certain groups, or with the right mindset. The allure of controlling districts and gaining unique rewards is very real. The added context to the battles and increased stakes made the highs feel higher and the lows feel lower. If you have a group who loves Mordheim and can keep things lighthearted despite the increased stakes, then I think the map campaign can work for you. So don't be afraid to give the Mordheim Map Campaign a shot. Just make sure you download your map at the right resolution for printing. And remember that the game is always meant to be fun first and foremost. Losing a game of Mordheim doesn't make you a loser. It just means that Mordheim probably didn't want you to win for some reason. And you never know. Maybe next time the dice will be kinder to you. So I think that's all I have to say about the Mordheim Map Campaign. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I've been enjoying the conversations I've been having with some people in there. And once again, thanks for watching, and I hope you have fun.